Let's begin with a poem. This is a poem by Robert Bly. One source of bad information. There's a boy in you about 3 years old who hasn't learned a thing for 30,000 years. Sometimes it's a girl. This child had to make up its mind how to save you from death. He said things like, stay home, avoid elevators, eat only elk. You live with this child, but you don't know it. You're in the office, yes, but live with this boy at night. He's uninformed, but he does want to save your life, and he has. Because of this boy, you survived a lot. He's got 6 big ideas. 5 don't work. Right now, he's repeating them to you. I want to talk a bit about this poem and a little bit about what I'm discovering about this boy that lives inside. It's been a pretty challenging couple of months for me. I had to take a break from the podcast, and I want to talk a little bit about that as much as I can, sharing what I'm able to share about the last couple of months. I've been overworked and stressed. My mother is experiencing some cognitive decline, and I'm the closest of the siblings here to her in terms of geography, and that's been new. I've had a lot of anxiety, and I'm the kind of person that denies that they're anxious. I have this great line that I say out loud and also mostly to myself. It'll be fine. It'll be fine. Tomorrow it'll be fine. Next week will be better. When this is over, things will go back to normal. And as much as I feel like I've learned that lesson, that I don't know what you would call it, denial, repression, ignoring, suppression, doesn't work in the long run, it's still a pattern. It's one of the boy's lines that he repeats. It'll be fine. It'll be fine tomorrow. It's also been a time where of kind of some deeper spiritual work. I've mentioned before, I'm in a spiritual direction program, being trained to become a spiritual director. I'm in the first year of the practicum. It's a 3-year program, so I'm in the second year, but it's the first year of the practicum, and it's a really, really rich program here in Grand Rapids at a place called the Dominican Center, which I mentioned before. Like all deep spiritual programs, it's formational, not informational. And so I've been getting worked some and shaped, and in some sense the blinders have come off a few things in a few respects the last few weeks, and like a dam broke a couple weeks ago, and this kind of locked in pattern. I was just reading something else I want to talk about is I was just reading the Gospel of John, because I have to give a sermon this week here at Mayflower, where I'm working, a congregational church here in Grand Rapids, and there was this line after the resurrection of Christ that really struck me. It says in the Gospel of John that the disciples had gathered in a locked room, and every single line in the Gospels, in these great stories, is shot through with this kind of symbolic radiance for those who have eyes to see and ears to hear. And that's how I've felt. I've been in a locked room. And maybe even I haven't even realized it. Like, I locked the room and forgot I locked the room, but I was locked inside like the disciples in kind of fear and fragmentation and scarcity and denial and anxiousness. And Jesus comes, it says, and stands in their midst and says, peace be upon you, which is, the polar opposite of that kind of locked in feeling. And that's the risen Christ. That's an experience of the divine in the midst of the locked room is what can open us up. It's a key. It's a mystical key that unlocks something when we're stuck. And I guess I've experienced a bit of that in the last couple weeks. So that's kind of where I'm headed with this podcast. And I really want to thank my patrons for your support. I wrote just briefly a little what was going on for me, especially with my mom and kind of some new health challenges, which so many of you know quite a bit about. You may know that my dad died of ALS 10 years ago, and that was its own grief and pain, this kind of ongoing slow decline and slip. And in some respects, cognitive decline is a little like that, but it and also it's totally not like that. And it's certainly a teacher in my life. I remember when I was in analysis. My analyst, I had a series of dreams about my mother, and as you do in therapeutic settings, this is analysis. Your childhood stuff comes out, and I remember once my analyst said, "You're going to have to deal with your mother," and I was like, "I don't want to. I'm here to deal with my dad." And she had a little wry grin on her face, and she just kind of shrugged her shoulders, kind of like, okay, well, you don't want to go there. It will come to you in due time. And that's certainly at least part of what I'm feeling and experiencing. So I want to maybe share a few things that are going on just for those of you who are interested, because I haven't mentioned kind of my other retreats and programs in a while. And I've got 3 Animus programs this year that I want to tell you about. I just got back from Joshua Tree guiding a Wild Mind program. That was really amazing. My next program is June 14 through 18 in Vermont. So East Coast trip, a lot closer for me than flying out to California or driving out west like Colorado or Utah, where a lot of these programs are. So this one's in Vermont, and it's a dream intensive. I'm guiding with a friend, a co-guide, Doug, at Animus. We've guided together before at Vermont, but not this particular program. So if dreams and kind of imagination is something that intrigues you, this is a great way in. So for 5 days, we'll be working with dreams and dream material, and really, really looking forward to that. So that's coming up quickly, and so you want to sign up for that right away if you can. My next program is in September. It's called a Soulcraft Journey, and this is something that Animus rarely ever offers. And but a friend and co-guide, Laura, and I will be offering this really amazing 7-day program. It's in Utah, and it's the only backpacking program. You don't have to have backpacking experience. You don't have to be a member of REI or something. We'll help you out with gear suggestions, and you can always borrow and so forth. But Soulcraft Journey, it's a really deep dive into what we call Soulcraft practices, and we move along down this absolutely magnificent canyon in Utah, a place that's kind of close to my heart in many respects. I actually was a participant on this program many years ago, it includes a 1-day solo fast. So we kind of journey into the canyon, and at a certain point, we send you out for a 1-day solo, 24-hour fast and solo. Really profound experience. So that's coming. And then November 15, the year-long program starts again. Animus offers a year-long, which means you're in the same cohort, small group, 13 people, and there are 4 different in-person meetings, intensives, really, out in wild places all around the country. And then there's in between work, in between the in-person sessions. It's, in my opinion, the deepest and best program that Animus offers. I'm really honored to be a guide. So if that interests you, both the Soulcraft Journey and the year-long do require an application, where the DreamWork Intensive doesn't really, I don't think, or at least the applications are a little bit different. But all that information is on the Animus Valley Institute website. So I encourage you to check that out. Okay. I actually want to begin with a little email exchange here, a messenger exchange. As you know, or as I at least just mentioned, I'm back in church work after about 10 years off. And after writing a book called Bitten by a Camel, Leaving Church, Finding God. I don't really like that subtitle. I didn't mind the leaving church bit, but the Finding God was the publisher's idea. And I don't know, it feels presumptuous and wasn't my choice, but I didn't have enough courage to say, nah, not the subtitle I want. But it is a book about my departure from evangelical Christianity, and really about a certain role I had at a megachurch, and kind of the culmination of my first half of life pursuits and aims kind of unraveling. This is in the book, but I had this kind of out-of-body experience once while preaching. It's like I could see and hear myself talking kind of from above. You know, you could call this dissociation if you wanted to. Whatever it was, it totally freaked me out. And I could see myself walking around the stage. And I had this curious feeling and thought, half-formed thought, what is that guy talking about? And it was something broke inside me. And it scared me, and I didn't know what to do with it. In fact, I ignored it. It'll be fine. It'll go away tomorrow, until it didn't. And absolutely, I had to let go of this part of my life and kind of wander out further. And it felt like a real descent, a real unraveling. And I found myself at a place called C3 eventually, and I've talked a lot about C3, a great community out in Grand Haven, not too far from where I live now. And I started teaching there, and C3, we called ourselves an inclusive spiritual community. So there was no doctrine, was no statement of faith. It wasn't particularly Christian. I felt free to be myself, but there was a whole mix of agnostics and atheists and spiritual people, and those with some Christian background and those without, and really amazing group of people. And the kind of funny thing about being there is that I thought, and I've said this before in the podcast, that I was in the kind of spiritual but not religious camp. And that's where I felt at home. I remember first reading that line and thought, yep, that's me. Except what started happening to me in this kind of post-evangelical unraveling is that instead of finding myself further and further from religious things and religious material, I started actually having spiritual experiences, religious experiences, dreams and visions and kind of synchronicities and strange, inexplicable tugs of the soul and heart. And I remember saying that I was starting to feel religious, but not very spiritual. Religious in the sense of the way my life is oriented is toward ultimate meaning, toward God, the divine, and I couldn't shake my own Christian subtext. It's like my psyche, maybe not even my psyche, but the collective psyche had been shaped and formed by the Christ, by the transformed one. And in fact, not only could I not shake it, it was starting to speak to me in ways that really surprised me. And it's like once I was out, that's when I started to feel the real call of I'm not trying to sound too fancy, but the mystical Christ. And again, maybe this will go away, and it didn't. And so kind of a slow realignment. That's what the word religion really means, like to remember, to re-put together, to realign. And I found myself more and more, I wouldn't say comfortable, but I would say inspired and conflicted with the Christian tradition. Because I think that's just true of all great spiritualities, spiritual paths, and religions. It's like there's good and bad there, and that's part of the tension. Like to stand within is to hold the tension of opposites, the good and the bad, the terrible sideways, really anti-Christ actions of Christians through the millennia and in the present moment here in the United States, and also some of the most merciful and grace-filled acts of human beings, extending forgiveness and love to the neighbor. It's also there as well. So I got this little message that said, hey, what the heck? I thought you were at C3. I thought you kind of left the Christian world, and I see you're back. What happened? and I think being I'm not like a super public figure, but just being a pastor means you're a projection magnet. And I heard someone say the clerical collar is a screen. People see what they want to see, and that's definitely true. And it's actually kind of hard to hold. So leaving, I got people's projections, and coming back. I'm not saying this person was necessarily projecting. I'm really not, but it drags up people's stuff. Me coming back drags up people's stuff. Like, sort of like, you betrayed us, you left the faith. And then I, quote, come back, and people are like, hey, you betrayed us, you left the non-faith. That's where I thought this person was coming from. Actually, I don't think they really were, based on our little exchange. And but I found myself for the first time kind of articulating, very briefly, kind of where I was at. I'm going to read you some lines, and they seem true. First of all, I said I'm enjoying being at this congregational church, and that congregationalism kind of works for me. And I'm appreciating, especially the older I get, the rootedness in the Christian tradition. It informs my life. The depth of music, but also particularly with congregationalism, it allows for individual autonomy of belief. I'm kind of reading my own lines here. It allows for individual autonomy of belief and conviction. And we're not a creedal church, which means all of our statements related to faith are something more like what we're aiming at. And I also just told some facts that a friend of mine, Ruth Bell Olson, she's the senior minister here at Mayflower, funny, politically incorrect name, of course, more or less recruited me, and it just seemed like a kind of natural alignment. And I've known Ruth since we were in high school. And I feel like I do have a lever and a place to stand. That's that kind of Archimedes myth. To my great surprise, I felt the pull back to a concrete Christian community, for better and for worse. And the opening and firming nature of the church, the way they hold a center without strict dogmatism, works for me. And then I said this little line about being spiritual but not religious, thinking I was, and saying again, I'm more religious in the deeper sense of that word than I realized after leaving evangelicalism. Anyway, I haven't talked much about the changes in my life, so thanks for asking. And anyway, I appreciate this person reaching out, and it just gave me a chance to articulate something that I kind of like to push down a little bit. And here's the truth too, like there's always the story of why we leave something. And in this case, also the story of why we return to something. And the story gets us going. And I'm not saying there's probably something much deeper at work than my capacity to articulate it right now. It's like in 5 years, I'll probably say something about more informed and intelligent about this kind of coming and going from formal church ministry. But this is just a few ways I'm trying to articulate it now. And I don't want to work too hard to craft a story. I feel like I'm being shaped by the mystery, by God, by the Spirit. And I want to, and I don't want to surrender to the shaping, what Rilke calls that great and harsh hand that kneads us like kneading bread, shapes us, forms us, that harsh hand. It's harsh and beautiful. And I don't know, I feel like that. I remember just recently I was reading some Ronald Rolheiser, and in his book, which is now I guess a kind of trilogy, but The Holy Longing I've mentioned before on this podcast. He's the next in that series, I think, is called Sacred Fire, and he kind of riffs a bit on the road to Emmaus story, where the disciples of Christ, after his death, leave Jerusalem and their heads are down, and it's just like two kind of unnamed people. Tradition has it as like a man and a woman, maybe a husband and a wife, or a boyfriend, girlfriend. They're walking along the road and their heads are down and they're depressed and sad, and their world has been shattered and turned upside down. And Christ comes alongside them. Of course, he's not recognizable, just like with Mary Magdalene. That's very mysterious. And he begins to talk with them, and it says their hearts burned, and anyway, they decide to go back to Jerusalem. Sorry, my phone's dinging at me. And wait. This seems to be Jesus' instructions. Go back to Jerusalem. Don't go away. Don't move away from Jerusalem. But go back and wait for the newness of life, for the Spirit, for the influx of inspiration, for the wind of God, for the mystery of creation, for the new creation, for the same breath that brought the universe forth into existence to move into your lungs and heart and mind and soul and give you new life. May you experience a kind of resurrection. That's what he's encouraging them to do. And they do go back to Jerusalem. They pick their heads up, they recognize Christ, and they go back and wait. And that move has been subtly at work in my life. It's like walking away from the church, my head was down, depressed, full of blame and bitterness and finger pointing. That's what, quote, deconstruction often looks like. And then there are little camps, like, come join our deconstructed camp, and we can make fun of all those people who were in the room that we just left 5 minutes ago. It's kind of attractive, but it has that kind of enclosed, head down, I'm in a locked room, And the Spirit, the resurrected, the mystery of Christ, the transcendent nature of the divine, comes alongside and opens their eyes and says, what's happening to me death and resurrection is possible in your own life. And I've headed back, at least aimed back toward it, Jerusalem, and I don't have time to go into too much detail, but I'll tell you, when I was in analysis, I had a series of dreams. Some of them took place in Jerusalem, and it did feel like a reorientation. Like, what is my actual center? I had one of my most powerful and evocative and kind of strange dreams took place inside the Holy Sepulchre, the place of Jesus's death and resurrection, in an inner room that I didn't know was there. And it's like my psyche was reorienting me toward things of ultimate concern. And so I'm just grateful. It's like, what does David White say? The life you can plan for yourself is too small. And that's how it's felt. I'm going to now take control of my spiritual life. And it's actually felt like, no, like a little foot, the foot of the sacred, the sacred stuck its foot out and I tripped and fell. And that's exactly what I needed to do. And the funny thing about change and transformation is that it's slow. My very first spiritual director used to say, the work of God is like a drip on a sponge. And I didn't really believe her, but almost 15 years after I first heard that, I think, yep, she was right. And so it's been slow. And I guess I thought if I did enough work and went to enough retreats and had a few mystical experiences, then I'd make it. I'd make it to the enlightened level or something. But it actually has felt like a series of humiliations being brought lower. And that's just ongoing. In fact, as part of this, those of you who listened ages ago to my podcast, Step Away from the Enneagram, will really appreciate what I'm about to say. I mean, this is kind of my wait, this kind of constant labeling, and I am this and you are that, and I relate to you this way because, I'm a this and I'm a that. And, I guess I can be kind of a jerk, and sometimes it's just against things that people are into. And I think some of those critiques were fair, but as part of this spiritual direction program, we had to return to the Enneagram. Just had to read one book on it. And I opened that book, and here was my feeling. I hope I'm wrong about myself. Because that kind of experience, I didn't know what I was talking about, has been a major doorway for my own very slow growth. And I thought, I hope I'm wrong, even about my number. And then I read the book, and actually I was convinced, no, really, I am a 4. Because I care about, creativity and individuality, and no one can tell me what to do, and I'm so original and that kind of stuff. And I got all the way through reading, and I got to the 9, the Enneagram number 9, and I was already bored at this point. And I just kind of skimmed through it and didn't think much about it. And it was my wife, big surprise, that said, you might want to look at the 9 again. And I opened the book back up, and I was like, oh my God. This rings my bell in a way that has never quite struck me in my own kind of love-hate with the Enneagram. In fact, what's called the root sin, so to speak, that's a very Christian way of putting it, but the root vice, you could say, of the 4 is envy. And now I can be envious. I see people's Sprinter vans, and I'm like, I want a Sprinter van, but I would not say that runs my life. So there's always been something like, I don't know about that. But the 9 is sloth. And from the outside, you probably wouldn't say Kent is lazy or slothful, not like in the sit around and watch TV, but avoidant of what really needs to be done. Lines like, it'll be fine. Now this runs my life. So avoidance, denial, wanting things to be easy, people pleasing, keeping the peace. Even I got into this great email exchange and with one of my patrons about, we were kind of going back and forth about whether or not what was happening in Gaza was a genocide. And I've always felt that I can see both sides. I don't even have to work at it. It's like a natural inclination. And the 9 is the peacemaker. I'm not saying I'm good at making peace. Keeping peace is something wildly different. Peacekeeping, I think, is like I don't want anyone to be upset with me. Peacemaking is actually working at something. So there's the kind of the virtue and vice at work, or the golden dimension and the shadow dimension. But my capacity to be relaxed in the presence of really diverse opinions has always been like a home base for me. And I was like, wait a minute. I ran into the Enneagram 20 years ago, and I'm almost 50, and I'm not. I don't even know if I'm at a quote 9, but that resonates much more deeply than anything else right now, and actually explains a lot of my behavior, good and bad, over the last many years. So yeah, like once again, slow drip on a sponge. What else do I not know about myself? And this is the Jungian thing. It's like, that's what Jung calls the shadow. And the fact that the 9 was so in the shadow that I couldn't even see it is actually kind of an affirmation. And then this kind of brings me back around to the poem for a minute. One source of bad information. So what happens is, as we're growing up, the slings and arrows of outrageous fortune, our wounds and hurts and grievances and the ways that we're misunderstood and not heard and not seen, the psyche in its brilliance learns to protect itself. He's uninformed, but wants to save your life. That's what Bly says. And he has. Because of this boy, you survived a lot, or this girl. He's got 6 big ideas. 5 don't work. Right now, he's repeating them to you. It's interesting that he sort of suggests that maybe one of his ideas works, keeps us safe. 5 don't work. It'll be fine. Nothing to see here. Protect yourself. And I think in some ways, maybe you don't feel this way about the Enneagram, but I think it's a good way of describing the false self. Maybe you've heard, I think I heard Cynthia Bourgeois say this, but your Enneagram number is what shows up when you're not present, or is what shows up when you're not, when the deeper self, the true self, the truer self, the capital S self, the soul is hidden down there, then you're kind of identified with these defensive strategies. And so I don't know. I mean, because I think, like with all things, the way I currently see the Enneagram, not that I'm going to make this podcast about the Enneagram, but I see all 9 types as archetypal constellations. And like all archetypes, there's an immature expression and a mature expression. And right now I'm just kind of focusing on the immature, defended or false self that tends to constellate around our wounds to keep us safe. You'll be safe if people like you. And I even remember, because I remember saying this to my wife once, it occurred to me once, this is when I was at a board meeting at Mars Hill, so big back in the megachurch, and I realized I had this like almost intuitive sense of, who do I need to please in this room enough to get by? That's a kind of a dark realization. And how much of the truth do I need to share with whom, is another way of saying it. Or how much do I need to conceal in order to keep the peace, to keep the equilibrium, my own inner equilibrium kind of at work? And that's kind of 9 behavior. That's one of the 5 strategies that works until it doesn't. So I feel like that's as far as I want to go today. And I think I'll just end again with the poem. Thank you so much for listening to my podcast and for supporting me and for sharing this podcast. And I hope you'll hear a hint, a guess, a clue for your own spiritual life, for your own ongoing transformation. If you feel like you're in a locked room or your head is down, may something of the mysterious and transcendent truth come and stand alongside you. May your eyes be opened. May the door be unlocked. May you discover even more of what you don't yet know about yourself. Not to shame you, but to humiliate you in just the right ways, like from humus, to return to the earth, to make you and me a little more humble, a little more human, a little more honest, and a little more susceptible to being shaped into our deepest potentials. Here's the poem. 1 source of bad information. There's a boy in you about 3 years old who hasn't learned a thing for 30,000 years. Sometimes it's a girl. This child had to make up its mind how to save you from death. He said things like, stay home, avoid elevators, eat only elk. You live with this child, but you don't know it. You're in the office, yes, but live with this boy at night. He's uninformed, but he does want to save your life, and he has. Because of this boy, you survived a lot. He's got 6 big ideas, 5 don't work. Right now, he's repeating them to you.